Hey everybody, I am in sunny Regina right now. I just finished up a bit of a busy day here. First off, I had the pleasure of meeting Chad Wagner, and Chad is part of the regional command here of the Legion for Saskatchewan, and had a really good chat with him, talking about how we can start to maybe start bridging the gap between the Legion and veterans, and start helping get people connected, both socially and with regards to resources, and helping veterans through transitions, and helping veterans manage their issues that they face after release. I also had the very distinct pleasure of speaking with Sheila Anderson, and Sheila Anderson was the 2016 Silver Cross mother, and she lost her son in 2007, Corporal Jordan Anderson, with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry on the 4th of July 2007. Him and 5 of his comrades were killed, and she and I had a very long discussion, just over the phone, unfortunately not in person, about how can we get veterans to resources, and how can we get them connected to the help and the support that they need. And you know, it was very humbling to speak with her. And one of the things we talked about, one of the things that came up was loss of identity, and that ties into, there was an article released I think about a week ago, and I shared it on the page, about Mass Corporal Joseph Alina, and we lost him to suicide just very recently. And the chief psychiatrist of the Canadian Armed Forces came out and publicly recognized that the loss of identity soldiers experience when they leave the forces is a huge stumbling block towards their rehabilitation or their reintegration into Canadian society. And you know, that article, these conversations today brought about a lot of personal reflection, and you know, I've definitely experienced that. And you know I said in an earlier video that I didn't cultivate those interpersonal relationships outside of the forces, and I certainly felt that when I left. I left alone, you know, pretty much entirely on my own. And the same can be said of my identity, and I didn't realize this for a long time, but being an infantier, being a member of the Royal Canadian Regiment, was a huge part of my identity. And I always kind of thought that I was my own dude and everything else, but I'm finding that hole is a lot bigger than I expected it to be. Now, by no means do I consider myself a two-dimensional individual. I mean, you know, I think I'm a man of substance, but it's undeniable that even though I carry on to do other things, kind of the core of things, the core of that identity, was tied to being a soldier, and not just a soldier, but a combat soldier, and you know, a member of the Royal Canadian Regiment. So I really underestimated that part of things, and I really underestimated how much I invested in that part of my identity, and how much of my self-worth was derived from that identity. And it has been absolutely eye-opening. Now, I transferred out of the Royal Canadian Regiment in 2012, and I became an imagery technician. And I mentioned it before that I immediately began to struggle. And there's a huge cultural difference between a combat arms trade like the infantry, and a support trade like imagery technician. Huge cultural difference. And I kind of cited that as the problem, you know, or as the source of my struggles, or a lot of my struggles. I said, you know, it's that culture shock. It's I'm not able to adapt to that culture, and there's truth in that. However, having taken a step back, and especially over the last few days, really putting a lot of thought into what those struggles were about and the problems I was having, you know, yeah, there's a change in culture and there's struggles going to come with that, but my reaction to that change in culture, I think, was very deeply rooted in losing the identity of being an infantier. And I think that made it impossible for me, because I didn't have that awareness of that loss of identity, maybe, to assimilate into that trade and to blend in. So, you know, I think that's at the root of a lot more problems than I realized when I first left the forces, or when I first left the infantry. But that being said, so 6 years ago, I lost a core piece of that identity when I changed trades, but I lost the rest of it in April when I released, and it has left a huge hole, and it has been a huge struggle to try and reconcile what's missing and what's and that part of my life that has changed. Now, I didn't assimilate well into the imagery technician world. Anybody who knows me knows that. You know, I was still a performer, still did my job, it's what we do, but there was just that piece that was off. And at one point in 2015, I considered going back to the Royal Canadian Regiment. You know, I'd completed my trade training as an imagery technician, and I said, no, this just isn't a fit. I think I want to go back to the regiment. And ultimately I didn't, for a number of reasons, but I have to say, as much as there have been times that I regretted changing trades and I thought that that was a bad decision and I should have stayed with the infantry, I think if I had done that, I would be in very, very serious trouble right now. I've spoken before about how that culture held me together and how it was holding me up more than I realized, which became apparent when I changed trades. But I think if I had stayed in the regiment, and I think if that culture had continued to hold me together, and I had then released in April as I did, I think that drop would have been, I think it would have been devastating. I honestly, that drop may have taken my life. Fuck it, it's a lot to say that, but I think that's a very real possibility. I've had the luxury of struggling with that loss of identity for 6 years still within the establishment of the Canadian Armed Forces, and still with access to the supports that come with that. And I think I'm very, very fortunate for that, because I think if I had stayed in the regiment, not experienced that loss of identity to the degree that I did when I changed trades, I feel like losing it all at once would have been absolutely catastrophic. So, you know, like I said, I'm not two-dimensional, but there's that center, that core identity that I don't feel I didn't cultivate. I cultivated, that was formed around Mike Terry 031. So Mike Terry the Infanteer. And I gotta be honest, getting out into the civilian world, Mike Terry 031 is not going to survive out here without some adaptation. And luckily I've had a jump start on that adaptation with the change of trade. But that's a pretty big realization that that core of that identity needs to change. And I really, it kind of opens my eyes to the fact that there are going to be other people who transition who are going to be in the exact same boat that I was. And I mean, it's inherent in the job we do. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And when that's gone, yeah, huge hole if we have not cultivated other identities. Now, you know, there's Mike Terry the adventurer, there's Mike Terry the teacher, there's Mike Terry the photographer, but all still centered around that core. So I've got some work to do. I always laugh and I joke and I say I've got to decide what I want to be when I grow up, you know, but as funny as it sounds, it's absolutely true. Sorry. You know, I've got some reinventing to do. I've got some investment to make in that identity and who I am. I've got a lot of self-discovery ahead of me in the next little while, and it's absolutely terrifying. It's frightening, but at the same time, it's very exciting. You know, I get to explore and reinvent myself with a whole base of experience and expertise, and any number of avenues to explore in doing that. And you know, as frightening as it is, as much work as it's going to be, it's pretty exciting. I mean, that's you know, to be able to go to school, I do have the support of Veterans Affairs. Luckily, you know, I've been in their system for a while, and those supports kicked in as soon as I released, and I am incredibly fortunate for that. So it's an exciting time, and it's a lot of work ahead of me, but you know, if one thing this journey has brought to me, there's more self-awareness, and there's certainly a lot more reflection, and I feel like I'm stepping off in September a lot more grounded than I would have been if I hadn't kind of come out here and started to explore a lot of these thoughts and emotions, and really work at trying to be open and honest. But yeah, there it is. Mike Terry 031, say goodbye. I guess we're moving on to Mike Terry 2.0. So for now, I'm gonna enjoy the lake here. I hear a powwow here off to my left, so I may go explore and see what's going on there. You know, I want to thank everybody else. I want to thank everybody for joining along. I want to thank everybody who's reached out. Sheila Anderson, amazing to talk to you today. Chad Wagner, same thing. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to me. I know that my journey comes to an end in 9 days. Holy cow. The 1st of September, I'm done. But you know what? I have a funny feeling that the work isn't done. I have a funny feeling this is going to carry on. So I don't know what that looks like, but you know, starting to get ahead of steam here now, and I think it's worth pursuing. Thank you to everybody who reaches out. You know, even if you're just dropping me a note to say, just to encourage me to keep going. Thanks to everybody who shares, everybody who likes, everybody who comments. Thank you to everybody who, you know, I might not hear you having the conversations, but if you're having conversations with other people about opening up and about your struggles, I thank you, because every time you do that, you are opening the door for somebody else to speak. And I truly feel that is the biggest stumbling block that we as veterans face, is our ability to, or our inability as it is, to open up about what we're feeling and experiencing and what our struggles are. So I want to thank you very wholeheartedly for that. To everybody who's donated to the GoFundMe page, or in person, or giving me a place to sleep, or a meal in my belly, thank you so much. And even more than that, so I want to mention Brian Barker. Brian Barker is a gentleman in Calgary who he saw the piece on the news, and he happened to notice my bike sitting at my buddy Jonathan's house, which was right behind the restaurant he works at, and he came over, and you probably saw it on my Facebook or on my Instagram. He came over and taped a note to the bike saying, "Hey, come on over, I want to buy you a coffee." And I got to meet Brian, and I got to hear just a little bit of his story. And you know, we as veterans are not the only ones who are touched by challenges, and you know, and what I was doing really resonated with him, and I want to thank him so much for reaching out. You know, it's breakfast and it's a coffee, you know, but it's not about what was given. It's about that reaching out and connecting, and how much that meant to me, and how much that really galvanized my experience of Calgary. Everywhere I went in Calgary, everybody I encountered and spoke to about what I'm doing, the support and the compassion was absolutely overwhelming. So my sincere thanks to the city of Calgary, and again to Jonathan for organizing an event to help me raise some funds, and to see what he does, and how exciting was that. Rick Razor Sharp, I grew up with him, went to high school, his cousin, and you know, I've heard his music, but I've never seen him live. And for him to share that with me, and to arrange that, you know, I'm beyond words. It was absolutely humbling. Really, it meant the world to me. So yeah, folks, I am gonna leave you with that right now. I'm starting to have to come to grips with the fact that in 9 days I'm gonna stop moving for a bit. At least in the sense that I have been for the last couple of months. I'll probably put up another video about that and talk about that adjustment, because that's its own you know, 15 minutes of your time. But yeah, thanks everybody. I really, you know, a trip around Canada is amazing. Let's be honest, absolutely amazing experience. But to connect and to interact with so many people in so many meaningful ways, it's without description. I can't thank you enough. All right, take care.